Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're tackling something that's been all over the news lately. Supply chain ransomware attacks.
Yeah, these things can really cause a lot of damage.
Absolutely, they can bring down entire industries.
Like that colonial pipeline attack.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, well, imagine you're building a house. You got all your materials coming from different places, lumber, wiring, plumbing, everything, right?
Right.
Now imagine if one of those suppliers, maybe the lumber yard, gets hit with some kind of cyber attack.
Oh, wow.
Suddenly, your blueprints are corrupted, your electrical system is haywire, total chaos.
Yikes.
That's a supply chain attack in a nutshell. To help us understand this crazy world a little better, I've got our cybersecurity pro here with me.
Happy to be here.
So maybe we should start with the basics, like what exactly is a supply chain attack and what makes it different from other cyber attacks?
Well, you see, traditional cyber attacks usually target an organization directly.
Right, going straight for the front door.
Exactly. But supply chain attacks, they're sneakier. They exploit the trust between organizations and their partners, kind of going in through the back door.
Sneaking in through a side entrance like a Trojan horse.
Exactly. That's what makes them so dangerous. They're really difficult to detect and defend against.
Because you're not just worried about your own security anymore, you got to worry about the security of your whole network, all your suppliers and partners.
Exactly. It's a whole new level of complexity. We need to start thinking about cybersecurity as a shared responsibility. Every single link in the chain has to be strong or the whole thing can collapse.
Okay, so we're talking about a chain reaction here, but how do these attacks actually work? What are the different ways they can get into a system?
Well, there are three main attack vectors, or you could call them pathways, that attackers use to exploit supply chains.
Okay, let's hear them.
First up, third-party software. Let's say your company uses a project management tool that was developed by an outside company, right?
Right, we use a lot of those.
If hackers can compromise that vendor, they can sneak in malicious code into their software updates.
Yeah.
Then, everyone who downloads the update, boom, infected.
Sounds kind of like a Trojan horse hiding in plain sight.
Exactly, like that SolarWinds attack back in 2020. Hackers slipped malicious code into a software update, and it spread to thousands of SolarWinds customers, including tons of government agencies and big companies.
Talk about a mess. I bet that was a nightmare to deal with.
It was, and it really showed us just how vulnerable we all are to this kind of attack.
Okay, so that's third-party software. What about the second way in?
Second, we've got malicious insiders. It's a bit simpler. Someone inside the organization, maybe a disgruntled employee or someone who's been bribed, intentionally sabotages the system or helps the hackers get in.
That's scary. Having someone you trust turn against you like that.
It really is. That's why strong internal security is so important and making sure you really vet your employees.
Okay, makes sense. And lastly, we have.
Compromised hardware. This could be anything from devices that were tampered with to fake components that are built to be vulnerable from the start.
So you're saying it's like having a spy right inside your system, just waiting for the right moment to strike.
Exactly. And these compromised parts, they're really hard to spot. They can just sit there for months, even years, waiting to activate.
So we've got poison software, rogue employees, and booby-trapped hardware. It's like nowhere is safe.
To make this even more real for us, can you walk us through some famous cases so we get a sense of just how big and how bad these attacks can be?
Sure, the Kaseya attack is a good example. Kaseya, they provide IT management tools to thousands of businesses.
Right, I've heard of them.
Hackers used a flaw in their software to launch a ransomware attack that ended up affecting over 1,000 of Kaseya's customers downstream.
So it wasn't just Kaseya that was hit, it was everyone using their software. That's a huge chain reaction. It is, and it shows how these attacks can spread like wildfire through entire industries. Another one is the Log4j vulnerability. Log4j is a piece of open source software that's used in millions of applications around the world. Well, they found a critical vulnerability in it that let attackers run any code they wanted on infected systems.
So this wasn't a targeted attack. It was a vulnerability that put tons of systems at risk.
Exactly, and it took months to even figure out how bad the damage was, let alone fix it. And even Okta, a company that actually specializes in security, got hit.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, they were compromised through one of their vendors, proving that no one, not even the security pros, are immune to supply chain attacks.
I guess it's like they say, it's not if, but when.
Exactly.
Are there any other cases that show just how clever these attacks can be?
Well, there's Carter B, an advanced attack that used what's called digitally signed malware.
Wait, hold on. Digitally signed malware, what does that even mean?
It basically means the malware was disguised to look like it came from a trusted source. Imagine getting a package that looks like it's from Amazon, right?
Right.
But inside, instead of your new headphones, there's a bomb.
That's terrifying.
But that's essentially what digitally signed malware does. It tricks security systems into thinking it's legitimate, so it can bypass all the usual defenses.
So it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing slipping past the guard dogs.
Exactly. And that's why supply chain attacks are so tricky to defend against. They exploit the trust we have in the systems and processes we use every day.
All right, so we've talked about the different types of supply chain attacks and seen some scary real-world examples. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. How do these attacks actually play out in real life? Can you walk us through the technical steps of an attack?
Of course. It all starts with what we call the initial infection. The attackers need to find a way to get a foothold in the target system.
Like finding a crack in the wall to slip through.
Exactly. This could be through a phishing email that tricks someone into clicking on a bad link, or by taking advantage of a weakness in a software or hardware program.
So it's about finding a way to break into the house, so to speak.
Precisely. Once they're in, they move on to what we call propagation. This is where they start to spread their reach within the network.
So they're not content with just being in the living room. They want to get into the bedrooms and the basement too.
Exactly. They might steal login information, gain higher access privileges, or use other techniques to move around, hopping from one system to another.
Okay, so they're like a burglar going from room to room looking for valuables.
And the last stage is payload delivery. This is where they unleash the ransomware, encrypting data, disrupting operations, and holding the organization hostage.
That's when the house of cards comes crashing down.
Exactly.
But why should you, the listener, care about all of this? What's really at stake here?
That's a great question. Supply chain attacks, they affect everyone, not just big companies or government agencies. Even small businesses and individuals can be victims.
So, what are we talking about here?
Well, the financial impact alone is huge. Ransom payments can cost millions, but that's just the start. There's also lost revenue from downtime, disruptions to operations, legal fees, and the cost of fixing everything.
So it's not just about the money you might pay to the hackers. It's about the ripple effect it has on your whole business.
Right, and then there's the reputational damage. When a company gets hit with a supply chain attack, it loses the trust of its customers, partners, and investors. People start questioning your security and whether they can trust you with their information.
That kind of damage is hard to repair. It's like a stain on your reputation that never fully goes away.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the data itself. These attacks can lead to huge data breaches, exposing sensitive information like customer records, financial details, and intellectual property. This can have long-term consequences for everyone involved.
Okay, so the stakes are pretty high. But what can we do about it? What steps can companies take to reduce these risks?
Well, there are several things. First, they really need to carefully choose their vendors and understand the vendor's security practices. Don't just assume a vendor is secure because they're big or well-known. Ask questions, do your research, and make sure they meet your security standards.
It's like checking references before hiring a contractor to work on your house. You want to make sure they know what they're doing and that you can trust them.
Exactly. And companies need to use what we call a defense in-depth strategy. This means putting multiple layers of security in place to create multiple lines of defense. Imagine your network is like a castle. You want a moat, a drawbridge, and a wall to protect it.
Right, so even if someone gets past one layer, they still have to get through the others.
Exactly. This could include things like network segmentation, where you divide your network into smaller, isolated sections to limit how far an attack can spread.
So if one part of the network gets infected, it doesn't bring the whole system down.
Right. And it's really important to have strong access controls in place. This means limiting who can access sensitive systems and data, using strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and what's called the principle of least privilege.
Principle of least privilege, what's that?
It means giving people the least amount of access they need to do their job, no more, no less.
Makes sense. Don't give everyone the keys to the kingdom, so to speak.
Exactly. And another crucial layer is what we call intrusion detection and prevention systems. These systems watch your network for any suspicious activity and can either block it or send an alert.
So they're like the guards patrolling the walls, keeping an eye out for any troublemakers.
Exactly. And finally, this is a big one. Organizations need to have a solid data protection strategy. This means doing regular backups, both on-site and off-site, and having a plan in place for disaster recovery.
So if the worst happens, you have a way to get your data back and get back up and running as quickly as possible.
Exactly. And, we have solutions that can take your data protection even further with immutability and air gapping, especially for backups and really critical data.
Immutability and air gapping. Those sound pretty serious.
They are. Immutability means that data, once it's written, can't be changed or deleted, not even by an administrator. It's like carving your data in stone.
Wow, so even if hackers break in, they can't mess with the data.
Right. And air gapping goes a step further by completely isolating your backup data from your network, physically disconnecting it.
So it's like having your backups locked away in a vault, far away from any potential threats.
Exactly. And that's what our solutions offer. They combine immutability and air gapping to provide top-notch data protection.
That sounds impressive. This has been a really eye-opening conversation. We've laid a good foundation for understanding the dangers of supply chain ransomware attacks. But hold on, we're not done yet. In part 2, we'll dig even deeper into the technical details and explore those tools and tactics hackers use to pull off these attacks.
So we've talked about how these attacks kind of exploit that trust and sneak in through the back door, so to speak.
Right.
Now let's get into the tools and tactics that make these attacks so dangerous.
I'm ready to play detective. What are we dealing with here?
Well, some of it is very sophisticated, like custom-designed malware that targets very specific vulnerabilities in a system.
So they're really doing their homework, carefully researching their targets.
Absolutely. They're also always on the lookout for zero-day vulnerabilities.
Zero-day vulnerabilities. Those sound serious. What are they?
Imagine a flaw in a software program that no one knows about, not even the people who made it. It's like a hidden backdoor that hackers can slip through before anyone even realizes it's there. And they're incredibly valuable to attackers because they let them completely bypass all the usual security measures.
Sounds like a ticking time bomb. How do you even protect against something you don't even know exists?
It's tough. It really is. It's all about being vigilant, keeping your systems updated with the latest patches, and having strong intrusion detection systems that can pick up on any unusual activity.
So it's like having a good alarm system and making sure all your doors and windows are locked.
Exactly. But attackers also know how to use totally legitimate tools for their own malicious purposes. They might, for example, hijack remote administration tools, the kind used for IT support, and use them to gain access to a network.
So they're basically turning everyday tools into weapons. That's pretty sneaky.
It is, and it reminds us that we can't rely solely on technology to protect us. We need to be aware of the human element as well. That means training employees to spot suspicious activity and avoid falling for those phishing scams and social engineering tricks.
So we've got sophisticated malware, zero-day vulnerabilities, and hijack tools. It's starting to feel like they're always one step ahead.
They often are, and they're constantly coming up with new ways to bypass security measures. One example we've seen recently is the use of what we call digitally signed malware.
We talked about that earlier. But can you remind me, what is that and why is it so effective?
It's a technique that makes the malware look like it's coming from a trusted source. Imagine forging a driver's license to get past security at an airport.
Okay.
That's basically what digitally signed malware does. It tricks security systems into thinking it's safe, allowing it to slip past undetected.
So like a wolf in sheep's clothing, it blends right in.
Exactly, and it makes these attacks incredibly difficult to detect and block.
Okay, things are getting a little intense here. What can we do to actually combat these ever-evolving tactics?
Well, it requires a multi-pronged approach. First, organizations need to be proactive about their security posture. This means keeping all their systems patched and up to date, implementing strong access controls, and having really robust intrusion detection and prevention systems in place.
So it's like having a strong immune system and practicing good hygiene, right?
Precisely. And it's not just about technology. Employee training is absolutely paramount. Everyone needs to be aware of the risks, know how to spot those phishing attempts and other social engineering tactics.
It's a combination of technology and human vigilance.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture of security where everyone understands the importance of protecting data and systems.
It seems like the stakes are higher than ever in this digital age.
They are. But remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about these threats, the better equipped we'll be to defend against them.
Well said. All right, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about how we can specifically help organizations protect themselves. You mentioned earlier that we have some solutions that can help.
Yes, we do. We offer a range of data security solutions specifically designed to protect against ransomware and other cyber threats. One of our key offerings is what we call immutable storage.
Immutable storage. What
Well,
is that and how does it work?
it's a type of storage that, once data is written to it, prevents that data from being changed or deleted, even by administrators. Think of it as a write once, read many system.
Oh, okay, so even if hackers manage to get into the system, they can't mess with the data.
Exactly. And this is especially crucial for backups. If your backups are immutable, ransomware can't touch them, guaranteeing you have a clean copy of your data to restore from if needed.
That's a big advantage. But what if the hackers somehow get access to the backup system itself?
That's where air gapping comes into play. Air gapping is a security measure that physically isolates your backup data from your network.
So it's like keeping your backups on a separate island, completely cut off from the main network, right?
Perfect analogy. This makes it practically impossible for hackers to get to your backups, even if they breach your main systems.
So it's like a double layer of protection. Immutability to prevent data from being changed, and air gapping to prevent access altogether.
Precisely. And our solutions offer both of these features, delivering the highest level of data protection available.
This sounds like a real game changer in the fight against ransomware. Let's not get too sidetracked, though. We still have a lot to cover in our deep dive into supply chain ransomware attacks.
Right. We need to keep digging into those tools and techniques hackers use to infiltrate systems. Let's talk about how they leverage something called lateral movement.
Lateral movement. That sounds sneaky. What's that all about?
It's a technique that allows attackers to move around within a network after they've gained that initial foothold. Think of it like a burglar sneaking from room to room, looking for valuables.
So they're not just content with breaking in. They want to explore the whole house and see what they can get their hands on.
Exactly. They might start by compromising a low-level account and then use various techniques to increase their privileges, gaining access to more sensitive systems and data.
So it's a step-by-step process, gradually working their way up the ladder.
Precisely. And they often exploit trust relationships that exist between different systems and users. For example, they might steal credentials from one user to gain access to another user's account.
So they're using one stolen key to unlock a whole chain of doors.
That's a great way to put it. And they often use automated tools to scan the entire network, identifying vulnerabilities and potential targets.
So it's a combination of stealth and automation.
Exactly. They want to be as quiet and efficient as possible, minimizing the chances of being detected.
I'm starting to feel like I need a security detail just to check my email.
Well, it's a good reminder that cybersecurity is an ongoing battle, and we need to be vigilant.
Well said. I think it's time to move on to something a bit more practical. In part 3, I want to explore the specific steps individuals and organizations can take to protect themselves from these attacks.
Sounds like a plan. I'm looking forward to sharing some insights and tips that can help our listeners stay safe in this crazy, interconnected world.
Okay, so we've really dug deep into how these attacks work and the damage they can cause. But now let's switch gears and talk about what we can actually do to protect ourselves.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, and the more we understand about these threats, the better we can defend against them.
So let's start with the basics. What are some simple, everyday things that everyone can do to improve their own cybersecurity hygiene?
Well, first and foremost, you need strong passwords. I know it can be tempting to use the same password for everything, but don't. Use a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols, and make it at least 12 characters long.
So password 123 is a no-go.
Definitely a no-go. And whenever you can, enable multi-factor authentication.
I've heard that term, but can you break it down for us? Why is it so important?
Sure. Multi-factor authentication adds an extra layer of security by requiring you to confirm your identity using a second device, like your phone, for example. So even if someone gets your password, they still can't access your account without that second factor.
It's like having a deadbolt on your front door in addition to the regular lock. Got it. What else can we do to protect ourselves on a personal level?
Be cautious of phishing emails and any suspicious links. If something seems off, don't click on it. Hover your mouse over the link to see the full URL, and if it looks strange, don't take the risk.
Better to be safe than sorry. Now, what about organizations? What are some things they can do to safeguard themselves against these attacks?
A crucial step is implementing a solid vendor risk management program. This means carefully vetting all your third-party vendors and making sure they have robust security practices in place.
So you shouldn't just assume that a vendor is secure because they're big or well-known.
Right. You need to regularly evaluate their security posture and make sure they meet your standards.
It's like checking references before hiring a contractor to work on your house. You want to be confident they know what they're doing and that you can trust them. What other measures can organizations take?
Network segmentation is another key strategy. This involves dividing your network into smaller, isolated segments to limit the spread of an attack.
So if one part of the network gets compromised, the whole system doesn't go down.
Exactly. It's like having firewalls within your house, preventing a small fire in one room from spreading and burning down the whole building. We also need to talk about data backups again.
Yes, we touched on this earlier, but it's definitely worth emphasizing.
Absolutely. Backups are your lifeline if you get hit with a ransomware attack. Make sure you have regular backups and store them offline or in a secure cloud environment.
So even if your data gets encrypted, you have a way to restore it.
Exactly. And consider using immutable backups, which can't be modified or deleted even by an attacker.
Like having a spare key hidden away in a secret location, just in case. Throughout our deep dive, we've been talking about our solutions, but for anyone who may have missed it, can you remind our listeners what we offer and how it can help them?
Of course, we specialize in providing data security solutions that go beyond traditional backup strategies. Our solutions combine immutability and air gapping, creating an impenetrable fortress around your critical data. This ensures your data remains protected from accidental or malicious deletion, alteration, or encryption.
So it's like having a team of expert security guards, a state-of-the-art alarm system, and a vault to store your most valuable possessions, all in one.
That's a great way to put it. We understand that data is the heart of any organization, and we're dedicated to providing solutions that help our customers protect their most valuable asset.
It sounds like we've covered a lot of ground today, from basic password tips to advanced data security solutions. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
The threat of supply chain ransomware attacks is real and it's growing, but it's not unbeatable. By being proactive, staying informed, and working with experts, we can mitigate the risks and protect ourselves and our organizations.
It's about being vigilant, thinking ahead, and knowing where to turn for help. And if you're looking for a partner to help you navigate this complex landscape, we're here for you. For more information about our data security solutions, you can reach us at sales@stonefly.com or visit our website at www.stonefly.com. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into supply chain ransomware attacks. We've explored the dark corners of the cyber world, exposed the secrets of these attacks, and armed ourselves with the knowledge to fight back. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there. This is The Deep Dive, signing off. Until next time, keep exploring.